There are machines that move freight, and then there are machines that move history. The difference? You feel it, right in your chest, the second you see one up close. Not in a museum photo, not on a screen. In person, standing next to something that shouldn't exist, that defies logic, that makes you wonder how human hands built this. Today we're going through 12 of them. The locomotives that defined America, the ones that crossed mountains, won wars, carried presidents, broke speed records, and refused to be forgotten. One by one, starting with the name. Let's go. Union Pacific Big Boy. The name says everything. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you this is one of the largest steam locomotives ever built anywhere in the world. When you stand next to a big boy, and I've seen full-grown adults next to one looking like toddlers, you get it instantly. No explanation needed. 1940s. The Union Pacific needed to cross the Wasatch Mountains in Utah. Brutal grades, massive loads, and no locomotive at the time could handle it alone without helper engines pushing from behind. That cost money, time, labor, so they said, fine, we'll build one that doesn't need help. 4-8-8 four-wheel arrangement, 25 meters long, over 500 tons. It pulled alone what others needed 2 engines to move. Restored big boys still run excursion trips today, and wherever one shows up, crowds follow. Because some things you just don't forget. The General. This one went to war. The General is one of the most famous locomotives in American history. Not because of its size, not because of its speed, but because of what happened to it on April 12, 1862. Union spies stole it, right from under Confederate control, and what followed became known as the Great Locomotive Chase, a full pursuit through Georgia, one stolen train being hunted down the tracks by another. It reads like a movie, because it basically became one. The General survived. It's preserved today, and it stands as proof that sometimes a locomotive isn't just a machine, it's a witness to history. Southern Pacific Daylight. Look at this one, red, orange, and black, running along the California coast in the morning light. If you've never seen a high-resolution photo of the Daylight, stop everything and go find one. I'll wait. Southern Pacific built this for luxury passenger service in California. And they didn't just want it to work, they wanted it to be an event. The paint scheme, the design, the panoramic coastal routes, every detail was chosen to make the passenger feel something. It worked. The Daylight became one of the most visually iconic trains in American history. And honestly, even by today's standards, that color combination is still stunning. New York Central Hudson, speed and comfort. That was the Hudson's promise, and it delivered. Built for long-distance passenger service between New York and Chicago, the Hudson represented something important about the 1930s. Railroads weren't just transportation anymore. They were a statement, a competition. Everyone wanted faster, smoother, more elegant. The Hudson's streamlined body was part of that race. Aerodynamic, refined, modern for its time. It didn't just carry passengers, it carried the idea of what American rail could be. Pennsylvania Railroad K4s. Some locomotives are famous for one dramatic moment. The K4s was famous for showing up, every single day, for decades. The Pennsylvania Railroad ran these things hard. Passenger service on the East Coast, year after year, hauling some of the most important trains in the country. And the K4s just kept going. Reliable, consistent, everywhere. Hundreds were built. That alone tells you something. When a railroad orders that many of the same engine, it's not because they wanted variety, it's because it worked. The K4s was the definition of a workhorse. And sometimes that's the most impressive thing a machine can be. Chesapeake and Ohio Allegheny Raw Power. That's the only way to describe the Allegheny. Built to haul coal, heavy, dense, maximum load coal, through the Appalachian Mountains, this locomotive was engineered around one question. How much can we move at once? The answer was enormous. The Allegheny was one of the most powerful steam locomotives ever built. But power at that scale comes with a cost. Massive fuel consumption, constant maintenance. A machine that demanded as much as it delivered. There's something almost excessive about it, almost reckless. I find that fascinating. Norfolk and Western Class J. Here's the one that arrived almost too late, and was extraordinary anyway. 1940s. Diesel was already taking over. The steam era was ending, and the Norfolk and Western built the Class J anyway. Black streamlined casing, gold striping, Fast, efficient, beautiful. Not just powerful, beautiful. Rail fans still argue today that the Class J is the finest-looking steam locomotive ever built. And honestly, it's hard to disagree. A preserved example still appears at special rail events. Every time it does, the steam had gotten more time? Would it have survived if there were more Class Js? I don't know. But it's worth wondering. Denver and Rio Grande Western narrow gauge smaller. Lighter, tighter curves? The narrow gauge locomotives of Colorado weren't built to impress on flat ground. They were built to survive terrain that was steep, extreme elevation, curves that standard locomotives couldn't negotiate. So they made them smaller, and they went where nothing else could go. There's something almost stubborn about that approach. The mountain says no, so you build a smaller train and go anyway. These engines became symbols of the American West, not because they were the biggest, but because they were the ones that refused to quit. Milwaukee Road Hiawatha, the 1930s and design, and the Hiawatha was right at the center of it. Speed, aerodynamics, modern interiors. The Hiawatha didn't just run fast, it looked fast standing still. Every curve of the body was designed to communicate motion, urgency, progress. Traveling on the Hiawatha wasn't just getting from one city to another, it was an experience you chose, that you dressed for, that you looked forward to. We lost something when that era ended. Reading T1. Here's something I love about the T1, it refused to disappear. After the steam era ended, when diesel took over and most locomotives were scrapped or forgotten, several T1s were preserved, and not just put in museums, kept operational, running at special events, letting people hear the sound, feel the ground shake, experience what steam actually felt like in motion. New generations getting on board a machine from another century. That's not nostalgia, that's a living history lesson. The T1 earned its place not just by what it did, but by what it kept doing long after everyone expected it to stop. Baldwin 6000. This one is a little different. The Baldwin 6000 wasn't built for a specific railroad job, it was built to prove a point. Baldwin Locomotive Works created it as a demonstration, a showcase of what American locomotive engineering could do at its absolute peak. A machine as argument, as flex, as statement. In the early 20th century, locomotive manufacturers competed fiercely. Who builds better? Who builds more powerful? Who builds smarter? The Baldwin 6000 was Baldwin's answer to all three questions at once. It became a symbol not just of one company, but of an entire industrial era's ambition. Durango and Silverton steam train. And this one is still running, right now, today. Through the mountains of Colorado on historic narrow gauge track, through canyons and rivers and landscapes that look like they belong to another century. Because they do. The Durango and Silverton isn't a museum piece. It's an active steam operation. Real coal, real fire, real steam, real noise. Passengers boarding the same way people boarded 100 years ago. I find it remarkable that this exists. That in 2025 you can buy a ticket, get on a steam train, and ride through the American West the way people did in the 1880s. Some things deserve to keep going. 12 locomotives. 12 different answers to the same question. How do you move a country? With brute force like the big boy. With elegance like the daylight. With stubbornness like the narrow gauge lines that refuse to let a mountain win. With endurance like the K4s, with beauty like the Class J. Every single one of these machines was built by people who believed the problem in front of them was worth solving. Completely, seriously, without shortcuts. Next time you see a train go by, think about that. There's more history in those wheels than most people will ever stop long enough to notice.